Richard II is full of foreshadowing of both events in the play and those in the future. Throughout Richard II, we observe the steady decline of the king as he slowly loses not only his power, but belief from all of his previous followers. In both Act 2 and Act 3, many characters give their own warnings and observations of King Richard and his rule. Shakespeare goes about foreshadowing the events in quite a unique way, through the imagery of decaying nature. In the first scene of Act 2, Gaunt warns Richard of his actions and says he is headed for doom. He says that the land of England was once majestic and a near paradise, but has been tainted by King Richard's pride and ignorance. He says that England is now bound in with shame, with inky blots and rotten parchment bonds. Through Gaunt's monologue, filled with striking imagery, we see that Richard's actions have caused the land of England to rot, and under the same rule, they will only continue to do so. In Scene 2, Greene states that the Duke of York's task to defend the country, with Richard gone, is like the task of counting grains of sand on a beach or drinking oceans dry. And in Scene 4, Salisbury compares Richard to a shooting star that is falling and goes on to say, "Thy sun sets weeping in the lowly west, witnessing storms to come, woe, and unrest." Both serve to show the near hopelessness of Richard's situation and clearly hint at an upcoming change in power. One of the best uses of nature and foreshadowing comes in Act 3, Scene 4, as a gardener is speaking with his servant. In this scene, the two commoners compare Richard to a gardener tending to England as a garden, saying that the country has been allowed to spread with weeds and be infested with insects. This descriptive imagery, combined with the fact that even the commoners can see the severity of the situation, shows us just how bad the state of England is right now under King Richard's rule, and that a change is inevitably coming. This ominous metaphor of decaying land appears often in Shakespeare, such as Marcellus's famous line in Hamlet, "Something is rotten in the state of Denmark." In ancient pagan England, the idea of decay and rebirth of the land was linked to the idea of the sacrifice of the ruling king and his replacement by another, called the Green Man myth. In Shakespeare, when a king finds his land decaying around him, it should be a sign that the death or replacement of the king is coming. This was the case in Hamlet, and it will also be the case in Richard II. In Act 1, Scene 2, we also see the metaphor the Duchess of Gloucester uses to describe the death of her husband, saying, "One flourishing branch of his most royal root is hacked down, and the summer leaves are all faded by envy's hand and murder's bloody axe." Gaunt said that Richard's leaves were falling as well. If Gloucester died violently and mysteriously, what will happen to Richard II now that his leaves are also falling? Nature obviously plays a large role in our lives. As we witness acts of nature every day, it is easy to see the imagery of nature and put it in context with the current situation. Man cannot escape nature, just as Richard cannot escape his fate. Nature is one of the strongest uses of symbolism and imagery in literature because it is something that everyone experiences and is a part of. When used as foreboding, the situation can appear even more grim and emotional. National Geographic had this to say on human impacts on the environment. The evidence could not be more graphic. Aerial photography and satellites show in vivid detail the results of laying waste to vast areas of forest and the harm done by poisons that humans have been pumping into the water and air during the century and a half since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Once fertile areas of the planet become desert, never to be green again within our lifetimes, and yet the abuse continues. Though it is true we cannot escape nature, mankind can certainly have an effect on it. Richard II's actions have caused his leaves to fall, in a sense, as his failure to the country of England has led to his demise. While nature has many aspects we cannot control, humans can be thought of as their own gardeners to the world around them. If we allow the environment to become a victim of corruption, greed, pollution, deforestation, and the many other problems caused by humans, we too will suffer the consequences. We see that Richard II uses a great deal of imagery through nature to both further enforce the events of the play and foreshadow future events. Here are some questions to consider. Why does Shakespeare use nature to foreshadow events so heavily in Richard II? Is it more than his other works? If so, why? And what else can we take or learn from Shakespeare's use of nature in the play?